A moment ago, we found how connecting your arm all the way up to the back of your skull, so we have one continuous connection, will really help you get buoyancy and also will adjust your postural organization so you're much more up. Let's continue exploring this. Well, that's interesting. Remember, your goal is to stay in contact as I move the egg. But the interesting thing was you got to a point where you thought, well, you must not mean to go over there.
Yeah.
What else could move that would allow you to come over there? You could take a step, I suppose. Move your feet. But there's another thing that can move that will really make a big difference. Your hip joint is way over on the side right here. So just bend your knees and your ankles a little bit. So as your arm comes across and this extends through there, what if your hip followed? That's a totally different thing.
Yeah.
So when we got that connection going up, it created a lot more buoyancy. But when your hip releases and we get the support right down to the ground. So instead of actually going side to side, let this just rotate around to follow the egg. That's it. That's it. Beautiful. Now, this is floating and buoyant in a way that it wasn't quite before. It looks like a great golf swing follow through.
Yeah.
So yeah, finding the buoyancy, finding that follow through and connection through your hip is enormously helpful in finding support through your system. Just choose to lock your hip again. Just don't let that move. And see what that feels like. Notice how your arm, your shoulder does not have the range of motion that it had a minute ago. Your arm's a bit heavier, and the feeling is kind of isolated, I expect. So just release your hip again. So it rotates around. Good. Yeah, your shoulder keeps extending so much further. It's a surprising thing, the freedom of the hip would have anything to do with the shoulder, because the way we tend to think about things is in pieces and parts. The hip is something to do with the leg, the shoulder is something to do with the arm. What do they have to do with each other? The fact is, you release your hip and the extension through your shoulder is so much greater. In fact, it's awfully hard to really decide where your arm ends. When I see that extend through your shoulder and your back and your hip and your knee and your ankle right down to the floor, it's not that unreasonable to say your arm is your whole body. Okay, now you have to, your awareness has to be a little different. You can't just focus on this. If you do, well, let's find out. One hand is light and the other hand is heavy because your focus is on the contact in one hand. Let your peripheral vision and your peripheral awareness just widen, and you'll trust the intelligence in your fingertips to tell you what the contact is. Great. And that's much easier and much lighter. Let's look again for the follow through the hips. If we go to this side, you're going to follow through in your left hip. Yeah, beautiful. And when you come to the other side, it's going to follow through in your right hip. There's always a connection through the floor, through your hip joints. And if we lock our hips, we're going to fragment ourselves in function. Now let's try something interesting here. We're going to extend around this side. Now we'll extend around this side. So we're fully extending through your left hip. We're going to start to bring this arm around. See if you can release through that hip, but we're going to stay over to that side. Notice when you do that, that your arms keep in contact. Your arms keep extending, and it doesn't close you off. I'll show you what I mean. If I extend to this side through my right hip, and really through the left hip, I can keep going, but it doesn't choke off my breath. I can still fully expand. But if you try. Lock your hips, and we'll bring this arm over to this side, and this arm over to, it just chokes you off. Yeah. And there's not much range of motion. We'll try the opposite. You keep in a nice clear contact with your fingers, and we'll extend it right through that hip. Let that keep moving at the same time you let this move, and notice it just, the extension seems almost infinite. Great. Take a breath with that, and feel how free and open it is. Beautiful. Let's look at just one more thing. If you have all 5 fingers in contact like you do now, just observe what that feels like. Now, let your 5th finger, the little fingers, just slide off and not touch anymore. And then everything else is the same. And how does it feel different? I expect there's less of a connection through your side. Yeah. Let's just look at one side here. When you have your 5th finger in contact, all the muscles through your side and right down to the floor are going to be supporting your movement, and you're going to feel quite connected to the floor. Mm-hmm. And it's just by losing that one finger, things become rather top-heavy. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, so bring that finger back and feel how much more rooted it is. Great. Mm-hmm. So the implications of that go directly to how we contact, well, a toothbrush or a golf club, but also a clarinet, or a drumstick or a saxophone, or how we play the piano. So realizing that the contact we have with an external object or fulcrum directly affect how our whole system works is an incredibly useful thing.